I'm Melissa Stevens, and you're joining me here today on the Encaustic Edge. The show we're doing today is called A Full Heart, just in time for Valentine's Day. But I think we all could use a little bit more love in our hearts in 2021 anyway, so here we are. So right here I've got an array of tools. We'll be using some of them, but not all. I put them out mostly so you could get an idea of the kinds of carving tools that you can use. Mostly today what we're going to be using is this awl, which has a nice pointy tip on it. This one's a little dirty, but I've already done a little bit of carving this morning. So this is a great tool for drawing and for really like fine detail stuff. And then some of the other tools that we'll be using today is the Linoleum block cutter. A Linoleum block cutter has lots of different tips to it. The one that I have on mine right now is a nice wide edge, and this is great for cleaning out large areas. There's also thinner tips, and they all fit on the top part of the tool. This comes off. It's a lid, so you can keep your extra cutting tools on the inside of the pen. Keeps it nice and organized, and you won't lose anything. So that's really handy. And then we've got some of the cleanup tools for scratching the inside of your drawn image. And these are rather large. This one I'll be using to smooth out the top surface. These would be used for like larger projects. If you were cutting away from a large portion or maybe a long ribbon type shape out of your painting, these would be really good for that. And then these would be used for the smaller type of cleaning tools. And then this is just a nice straight edge. It does the same thing as a razor blade would. It just is really nice because it's got this nice handle on it. So it's a really nice, easy way to even out your top surface area. This tool I found not at an encaustic store, and I didn't find it in an art store either. This is found on, I think it's called Clay Mountain or something like that. I'm not sure. It's a clay tool specifically, and I found it on a clay site. So a little harder to find, but still worthy of the studio. So right in front of you here, I did a heart earlier today so that you could see kind of the finished product. We're going to be doing the cutting and the filling in a couple of different ways. There are lots of different ways that you can fill a space after cutting out, drawing and carving out that surface area. But we're going to just be covering a few today. I will show you what I have available in my studio and those things that are available from classes that I teach. If you're online, I welcome you to go ahead and make a little comment or ask a question, and I will try to get to you while we're live. Okay? So I wanted first to show you this tool, which is got a handle on this side, and this part here is the heated part, and again lots of tips for the top of it. This is an encaustic stylus, but what I have here is actually a wood burning tool, and you can find out more about these tools on my show. It's part of the Encaustic Edge, and the video is called The Heat is On, where I cover all of the different heating tools for the encaustic medium. So you can find out more about this particular tool there. But basically this is a wood burning tool that I then have attached to a lamp dimmer switch to control the heat, because a wood burning tool would be much, much too hot to manage on the encaustic medium. It would end up burning my paint, which we don't want to do. So this would be used as a fill tool. The tip that I have on it right now it's kind of like a calligraphy pen in that it has a nice tip. It's not super pointy, but then I'm trying to show you on the video, there is a line that goes up the tip that starts from the end and goes all the way up, and that acts as kind of a siphoning tool. It sucks up all of the paint when you dip it into a cold block of wax. But first, let's get to the carving part. We'll go ahead and continue on this painting that I've got here in front of me. I've already drawn one heart here, but I'll go ahead and show you how I do that with the awl. And you literally just use it like you would a pen or a pencil, and you can draw directly onto the paint. If your studio is a little chilly like mine, you might opt to just warm your surface area just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just kind of warm it. We're not trying to fuse the wax. We're not trying to make it molten. We're just wanting to warm it a little bit so that it'll be easier to carve into. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a heart here. And you can see how easily the wax took the awl. And hearts are fun because they can be oblong, they don't need to be perfect, they can be any shape you want them to. So the awl is a great tool to make a nice fine line with. The linoleum block cutter, because I have that wide tip on it, I did that so that I could carve with it, not so that I could clean with it, not so that I could carve with it. I could potentially put a thinner tip on this and draw directly with the linoleum block cutter as well. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my linoleum block cutter and I'm going to go ahead and just start cleaning the inside of my heart. Now this is going to reveal the layers that I have underneath it, which is a really nice effect, but that's not what we're going to do today. Today we're going to fill. So that's how the linoleum block cutter works. You would put it in the palm of your hand and push forward. I like to use two hands with this so it doesn't get out of control. And then I just go ahead and carve like that. I could potentially use this tool as well, especially around those curved edges, and just pull back away from my line. And I don't have to worry about messing up those nice curved lines because my scraping tool is actually curved as well. Make sure to hang on to those, pardon my dogs, hang on to the excess wax so you can reuse it. So this is a really great tool, and you can see even away from the curved lines I can use it to clean. If you wanted to, you could use the straight edge for the inside, which does kind of a nice wide clearing of the wax. And I'm just following my line right up to the edge with my tool. I'm going to go ahead and switch around and use that nice round edge again. Oops, I went a little outside the line. And that doesn't really matter either if you end up going beyond your line and scraping off more, you can just carve it again to make it the shape, that larger shape that you created. Or you might opt to fill it. So I'm just going to kind of clean it up with this. There we go. And that'll get cleaned up too as we fill that space. So I'm going to go ahead and hold it a little closer so that you can see the depth of the cut. It's probably, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so deep. And again, really kind of cool results that we got carving down into the other multiple layers below. But again, we're going to fill that. I didn't do it very carefully, and it's also, when I run my finger across it, it's not super even either, and it does not need to be when you go to fill it. So right now we're going to go ahead and fill that using the encaustic stylus, or in my case, the wood burner. And let's go ahead, and I've got this really beautiful R&F iridescent pearl color. When you melt this, it gives a really nice sheen. This color has a little bit of it in there as well, but I also used a burgundy color. So let's go ahead and just go straight on. So what I do with the tool, the tip is already hot, and like I said, that line will suck up the wax when I put it onto the cold wax. That it'll heat the paint immediately. You can see it get kind of juicy in there when I put my tool in there, and that line just absorbs all that paint. So when I come down here and start laying it down, it just pours right out of it, which is a really cool deal. And then when I run out of fuel or paint, I can just go ahead and get a little more. And what I generally do is I fill that larger part first before I get down into the details of it or going against the line. The thing you need to be careful with, if you don't want to be absorbing any of that color that's already on your surface area, because this is a heated tool, it will loosen the layers that it touches. So you can see a little bit of an orange tint going on there, but then I can just cover that back up with the iridescent pearl color. So once I have enough paint in there, I'm going to go ahead and work with some of the color that I have underneath there. Just from a time standpoint, that's going to work best for us today. But then you can see I can get a little closer to those edges. And I just want to work right up against there. Because they're raised, they're going to hang on to that new color that I'm putting into and filling in to the carved design. So it's not going to want to jump beyond that because there's an edge there that it's basically laying against. The nice thing about this tool is that once I'm done with this, I do not need to fuse it because I'm applying that paint directly on there nice and hot and basically fusing it as I paint. I'm going to go ahead and keep filling. The thing that I would probably want to do is just do a little bit of a blade across the edge to kind of clean it up. And for the process of just smoothing that area out, I will do just a little bit of fusing to make it a nice smooth layer. Now there are other tips that you can put onto the head of the encaustic stylus that are more like irons, and these would do a great job of smoothing out that area as well. I just don't want to bother with having to wait for these to heat up while I'm live with you. So take a look online and you can find lots of different tools to put on the tips of the stylus. This one's round, this one's more like an iron. So lots of different options out there. And then I also have the larger flat, they're almost like pancake spatulas. I could make little mini pancakes with them. I guess I must be a little hungry. So those you can use to also smooth out that top surface area. I'm going to show you a little bit on how to do it using a smaller torch. So I'm just going to keep on filling this with the stylus. Let me know if you have any questions. The stylus can be found at just about any art store. You can also find it online and in the encaustic section of art stores. So this is a really fun tool to use, especially when you're doing really detailed work. So you can see I used quite a bit of the wax from this block. And it just kind of, I don't worry about the blend of the color in there. That's going to be so little, and it won't change the color of this when I go and melt it down. So once you're done with the head, it's very important to clean that wax out. I have a little bit of, right now I'm just using a paper towel, but that slit also needs to be cleaned out. So what I need to do is take the 2-ply of the paper towel apart. Let's see if it's going to let me do that. Should probably gotten a new one. So we want to take that apart. Oops, there it goes. And then you can slide that single ply paper towel into the slit, and that will clean out. You see how it's in there? And that'll clean out any excess paint that got trapped into that section of the pen. You can also just wipe it off. What's important about cleaning that off is if there was any fluctuation in the heat on the tip, if suddenly it got really, really hot, the paint would burn and start to smoke. And as we all know, that's very bad for you. So now that that's there, I found that I did just get a little bit of an excess over the edge. I'm going to use my scraping tool to kind of clean that up. And then I'm going to use, I have my big butane torch here. Oops, there it is. But I am going to use my little chef's, what's like a creme brulee torch. It's really small. And that's because this is just such small work. If I apply too much heat, it's just all going to kind of glom together. So I have a lot more control with this torch. And again, you can find out more about heating tools by watching The Heat Is On. All of the torches that I use are covered in that, as well as the tools like the encaustic stylus that I just used. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to lock it. And from a distance, I'm just going to fuse it. You might see my edges collapse a little bit, but that's all going to get cleaned up. I'm really just looking to smooth out my surface area. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right. And then once that cools, I can take my scraping tools like this one and just cover, go around those edges to clean them up. So, looks pretty good. There's one heart down, just a few to go. So we're going to go ahead and let's see, let's wait for this to cool. I don't want to do it too hot because I'll end up taking off too much. But I just want to show you how I can clean this up. And I'm doing it in really small, light strokes of scraping because I don't want to remove too much as it's kind of too hot. The color is spreading in a way that I should be able to control if it were cooler. Just trying to get in there a little too fast. So just trying to smooth out those edges. Again, it's still pretty warm. Yeah, I'm going to end up kind of messing this up, but kind of like it where those orangish red highlights are on there. Kind of cool. It almost gives it a shadowy effect. So I could go back in there with my encaustic stylus again and fill some more. It's still not quite, as I'm touching it, I'm realizing it's still not flush with the top surface area. So I could either continue to scrape back that surface area or continue to fill the heart shape. Either or. And just do one more fusing to get rid of those scrape lines. And again, it's just a really tender, sweet touch of the heat. Because I'm not looking to blend, I just want to get rid of those scraping marks. Alright, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and work with the heart that I've already cut out here for the next portion. And that is, I'm going to go ahead and clean that out with my linoleum block cutter again. Doing the broader portion of the heart with that. I'm going to make sure to take my scraps away so that it doesn't get bogged down. You can see I went over the top a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just create a new line. When I work with a linoleum block cutter with my encaustic medium, I tend to move the board more than I move the block cutter itself. You're going to see a little bit of gold leaf. I believe I have some gold leafing down underneath here, in which case it could be cooler to leave it the way that it is. But we're going to fill again. So it's a lot easier for me to get those nice round edges by turning the board than it is by me trying to manipulate my hand in a way that makes it round. And I also run the risk of my linoleum block cutter jumping the edge and running across, just like that, running across my board and my surface. So I did a little bit of a jump there. I'm going to try and clean that up. All right, that looks pretty good. Try and get rid of that green. There we go. So there's my heart. And this time we're going to use a different tool. We are all done with the encaustic stylus, and we're going to jump to the squeeze pen. It's backwards, I don't know why. At any rate, mirror image squeeze pen. It is just like an eyedropper, but it is metal. The tube part is metal, and this is the squishy rubber part. So it works just like an eyedropper. You put it into your melted encaustic paint and squeeze the head, and it'll suck up the paint, and then you can fill the space that you carved out. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a color off my palette here and suck up some paint. And quickly, I did some dripping, that's okay, I can clean that off pretty easily. But you're going to see, because I'm applying this hot, and I might have to come in, and I could use my iron to smooth it out. In my case, I'm going to use a razor, but this is just going to add such a beautiful amount of color to this space, and very, very quickly. I drank a little too much coffee this morning, so my hand is a little shaky. So that is a lot of paint in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean it out with a little bit of soy wax so that that color doesn't get trapped inside there. And then another thing that I can do to clean this tip is to remove the bulb completely. And if I just set this metal part on my palette, all of that paint will just melt right out. So super easy to clean. This is still pretty warm, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the excess here on top. So for this, you could use a straight edge razor. In this case, I'm using the one with the handle, but you could also use just a straight blade, which I also use quite a lot and feel like I have a little bit more control over because my hand is that much closer to the surface area. again, just really thin layers so that you're not taking off excess layers of your paint. What you could potentially do before doing a fill, if you were really concerned about affecting the surface area, is to lay down a layer of clear encaustic medium first, because then that will preserve whatever you have painted underneath there. So first, even though I potentially don't really need to fuse it, I'm going to try fusing just a little bit and see if that color will spread out just a little bit more evenly before I start to scrape. It should, but I also don't want to soften my edges too much. It's not doing too much. So we're going to wait. No, that's really hot, so I'm going to wait just a minute. Another way that you can just fill space is by using a tool called a janter. Janters are used in batik. And they look like this. I bet you've seen them before and not known what they were called. So what would happen is that you would fill the top portion with the liquid hot encaustic paint, and then it comes out the tip. Now there are different kinds of janters that have different kinds of tips. This one is the largest tip, which I prefer, but then I have 4 different sizes here, and they just keep getting smaller. There is also a specific encaustic tool called an Encaustic Writer, and that is really nice because, like the encaustic stylus, it's attached to an electrical cord, maintaining heat in the portion where your encaustic paint is, and then so you don't have to worry about your paint freezing up or cooling. If I were to use this, after a while I would have to set it back onto my my hot plate so that that wax could warm up again, or I would have to go through the process of cleaning it out and refilling it. Another thing that the encaustic writer has that this doesn't, as soon as I fill this with hot wax, it's going to start coming out of the tip. And the only way that I can control that is by kind of holding a piece of paper or cardboard against here before I let it down over my encaustic painting. The Encaustic Writer has a needle that fits into that pointed part so that when you set it down onto your surface to write with it, it automatically lifts that needle and then lets the encaustic paint out. So it is a little bit of a cleaner deal with the Encaustic Writer, but I wanted to try these janters, and they do work really nicely. And again, because you're applying that paint really, really hot directly onto your painting, there's really very minimal fusing that needs to be done. So let's go ahead and scrape off the excess of this to make it nice and uniform with the surface, and then we're going to have to go back in there and add a little bit more paint. So by adding that much paint to the surface, it was very, very easy for me to get the amount of paint that I needed to make it flush with the surface. There was, no doubt about it. I wouldn't have had to rework it, other than just to fill in those areas that are fill in the areas that are still, there's a hole there. So I'm gonna go ahead. My tip is really, really hot, and I probably should have used my needle nose pliers there, but I got a nice burn earlier today, so I'm just trying to add to my mix. Okay, so I can't add my top to that just yet, so I'm going to go ahead and use my stylus since it's still warm. Just going to let it kind of suck up the paint and add the excess with my tool. I did turn it down quite a bit, so. It's not going to be fusing so much as just adding that extra paint to the areas that didn't get hit before. So, I'm making a big mess here. Alright, so there's the excess. I'm going to go ahead and fuse that a little bit so it settles. And then I'll go ahead and scrape the excess off. Okay, it's starting to fuse and mix and blend with those colors around it. I'm going to wait for that to cool off for a little bit. And so we've got the janters, which you can find. I found my janters online on Etsy. That was the area where I was most successful in finding it. The Encaustic Writer you can find on R&F Paints. You can find it possibly on the Encaustico site, and you can also find it sometimes in specialty art stores. So that would be my recommendation there. I'm going to close off my janter box and wait for this to cool. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just looking for my razor blade. For those of you who are looking to clean up your studio area, what's really handy for your straight blades is to get one of those magnetic needle and pin holders at a sewing store, and then your razor blades can safely sit in a place where they're not going to cut you inadvertently by sitting on the table and that sort of thing, and you always know where to find them. That's been a real lifesaver for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use my blade, clean up those edges. Again, it's nice and even with the surface of my painting, so go ahead and take off that excess paint. Oops. And there we have another heart. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse that, get rid of those scrape lines. Lots of that for my razor blade, mostly just around the edges of the heart. And you can see when I fuse that I'm not staying in one spot for too long. And that is because this is such a small little detailed area that I don't want my fused paint to start spreading. If I stay in one area for too long, all that hard work is just going to blend directly back into the paint around it. It's not going to have those defined lines that I'm looking for. So I could potentially go in and use my finger and smooth, so on and so forth. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. I would probably, once that cools, go back in with my blade and clean it up just a little bit more. Another thing I could do once it cools is I could go in with my linoleum block tool again with even a finer point and do an outline or an additional design inside the heart and then fill that. So there's lots of ways that you can manipulate. Maybe we can do that with the next show. So we've got the encaustic stylus as a filler. We've got the squeeze pen as a filler. We have the janter as a filler. And then the last section that we have to fill is just by, it's the same idea as doing intarsia, where you carve a line and fill it with wax, which is done, you can see that done in my encaustic demo. another way that we can make a heart and fill it is just by carving out that space and filling it with hot wax from our paintbrush. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do one more heart. And even though my paintbrushes are really large, I can get rid of, again, that excess paint with using a razor blade. So just carving. Oops, my light is fluctuating. All right, so there I carved a heart with my wide tip of my Encaustic, or of my linoleum block cutter, and then I can just go ahead and take out the inside using the blade as well. So I'm sure you've noticed that even as when I clean with my linoleum block cutter, I end up with these kind of bumpy lines, like if you were making a linoleum print or like a linoleum block cut. So it is textured, but all of that disappears when you fill it. It doesn't really matter. So, and I'm not going all the way down to the board. I'm just going down to those other layers below. And I could do it with much, not quite as much thickness, but I find that the paint really likes to stay put a little bit better when it's got more of a raised edge to it. I'd love to know what kind of projects you guys are working on, or if you've done this kind of thing before. I do a lot of this with my painting. You can go to my website and see some of my work there, and you'll recognize a lot of the techniques that I do on my live video chats. So there I've got a nice shaped heart, just in time for my Valentine. And I can then go ahead and take my paintbrush and fill that heart, oops, with some color. Let's see, what color should we do? I am a big fan for orange, but we'll do a nice red heart. So I'm going to tap off as much as I can, because my paintbrush is rather large, and then I'm going to go ahead and just fill that heart with some paint. Again, I'm not too concerned about going over the edge. And what I could have done is just gone in and done some paint strokes. That would have worked as well. But I really am just looking to fill that up. There we go. Smooth it out. Get all the way up to the edge. And I just kind of give that a minute to cool. It does kind of look neat, all spattered like that, and I could potentially just fuse it and leave it just like that. But I want to go for those cleaner lines. So let's, still pretty warm. So you might notice that on this heart, I've got a few little points while we're waiting for this one to cool a little bit more. Got a few little areas where there are holes and that sort of thing. I could then go in with my paintbrush, scraping off as much as I can, and doing more of kind of what I did just below here. And it'll fill all those spots, and then again I can go over it with the scraper. So let's go ahead and do a little scraping here. This is a really cathartic process. You go in with a whole lot of paint and you fill this vast area on your painting, and then you go and use your scraper and get it all smoothed out. It's such a fun, I love it when a plan comes together, to quote the A-Team and really show my age. So there we've got really beautiful shape, and it looks like it is just a continuation of the paint. Got a little bit of texture in there, and that is an area that is not the same depth as the rest of the paint. I could potentially use a really small tipped heating tool. This is a portable torch. And I can just kind of heat that texture away. Just really gently fusing it. Gets rid of the scrape lines that I just did, and it evens out the spread of that paint so that I'm left with a nice, soft, smooth finish. Again, it just looks like a continuation of what I just painted, just super magical. This heating tool is really a nice one, super small, and it's great for, I've used it for anything from like fixing little areas that are cracked or broken, to doing more really detailed work on a painting, which is super cool. So there, that is beautiful, nice bright red heart, just looking like a continuation of the paint on the surface. Love, love, love. Let's see about this orange one. It's not really orange, it's kind of a muted, I think it's called Indian yellow. Let's see how this is going to turn out. Remember to remove your shavings as you're scraping. I get into trouble and I get so into what I'm doing that I forget to remove the scrapings, and then I end up with a big mess on my surface. This one is kind of disappearing. I think maybe the colors just weren't contrasting enough. I'll keep scraping and see if I can save it. It's starting to come out a little bit better now. There we go. So again, I would go in and fuse. Just a real gentle heating, getting rid of those scrape lines. Valentine's Day is one of those kind of weird holidays. It's not something that my husband and I really celebrate. We feel like we show each other our love year through, so we've always made it a point to celebrate with friends. Of course, this year that's not an option, but perhaps we can get a nice little Skype session in or something. Do you have plans for Valentine's Day? Love to hear about them. All right, so got some little air bubbles going on in there, but I'm not going to waste time messing with that right now. But there you have the stylus fill, the dropper, the squeeze pen fill, and then this is the paintbrush fill. So those are some really easy ways to create shapes and fill them and make them nice and even with your painting. So I hope that you learned something today and that you had fun. And I know I did, and I hope to see you again sometime. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye. Oh, where's my little cursor? Ah, there we go. Oh, one more thing. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's see. We want to make sure to subscribe. Another thing that you might want to do is go ahead and hit the bell button. That will give you a reminder when I'm doing live shows, and just kind of do a little blip on your screen so that you don't miss out on anything that's going on that's live. It'll also give you a reminder for my premieres with the Fab 15. So leave a comment, ask a question, give me a thumbs up, or subscribe, and I hope I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.